So, Alex, I was just reading this morning that DRAM spot prices have jumped nearly 700% in the past year. 700%. I had to check the number twice.
Yeah, and that's not even the scariest part. What keeps me up at night is the collision course we're on right now. You've got the biggest memory chip shortage in semiconductor history slamming into a geopolitical energy shock from the Iran war. It's a perfect storm, and I don't think the market has fully priced it in.
Welcome back to Asia Tech Macro. I'm Maya, and today we're unpacking what might be the most consequential supply-side crisis for the tech industry since the 2020 pandemic disruptions. Except this one could be worse.
Much worse. Because in 2020, the problem was temporary factory shutdowns. This time, the problem is structural. Let me lay out the numbers. Bloomberg reported in early February that the four biggest U.S. tech companies, Amazon, Alphabet, Microsoft, and Meta, have forecast combined capital expenditures of roughly $650 billion for 2026. CNBC actually pegged it closer to $700 billion when you include a couple more hyperscalers. That is up more than 60% from the already historic levels of 2025.
$650 billion. That's like what, the GDP of a mid-sized European country being poured into data centers in a single year?
Roughly the GDP of Sweden, yes. And every single one of those data centers needs enormous quantities of memory chips. Here's the structural problem. Data center demand for DRAM surged to about 50% of global consumption in 2025, up from 32% just 5 years earlier. TrendForce estimates that AI alone will consume nearly 20% of total global DRAM wafer capacity in 2026 between HBM and GDDR7. But annual DRAM capacity growth? Limited to just 10 to 15%.
So demand is growing at multiples of supply. The math literally does not work.
It does not work. Micron Technology called the bottleneck unprecedented, and I don't think they're being dramatic. TrendForce data shows average DRAM prices surged between 50 and 55% just in Q1 2026 compared to Q4 2025. Server DRAM specifically jumped over 60% quarter over quarter, and Digitimes is projecting DRAM prices could surge up to 70% in Q2 2026, on top of what we've already seen.
Wait, 70% in a single quarter? After the increases we've already seen?
On top of everything. And the HBM situation is even more extreme. High bandwidth memory, which NVIDIA needs for its AI accelerators, is completely sold out. Micron admitted they can only meet about 2/3 of the medium-term memory requirements for some of their customers. A third of demand is simply going unmet. You know what Elon Musk said? He declared that Tesla is going to have to build its own memory fabrication plant. When Elon Musk is talking about building his own DRAM fab, you know the shortage is real.
That's classic Musk, but also kind of terrifying. Okay, so that's the memory crisis side of the equation. Now let's talk about the Iran war, because this is where things get really ugly.
Right. So the US-Iran military conflict escalated dramatically in early March. Bloomberg's analysis from March 12th laid it out in 4 numbers. Brent crude surged above $100 a barrel. Oil prices spiked nearly 30% in a single week. CNBC reported on March 10th that NVIDIA, Amazon, and Google temporarily closed their Dubai offices. Google employees were stranded.
And there are calls for the largest ever strategic oil release. Bloomberg reported on March 11th that the world is racing to shield oil flows after the war hit supplies through the Strait of Hormuz. A third of the world's seaborne oil passes through that strait.
And here's the direct connection to our memory chip story that I think is criminally underreported. CNBC ran a detailed analysis on March 10th, and the key insight is this. AI data centers are 3 to 5 times more power hungry than regular data centers. When energy costs surge 30%, the total cost of ownership for hyperscalers goes up dramatically. UBS analysts explicitly flagged that this could slow the pace of AI infrastructure adoption.
So you've got memory chip prices going through the roof, and simultaneously the cost of powering these data centers is going through the roof. That's a double squeeze on the entire AI build-out.
Exactly. And the damage is not evenly distributed across Asia. South Korea is getting hammered from both sides. SK Hynix and Samsung are the world's 2 largest memory chip makers, and Korea is heavily dependent on energy imports. CNBC reported that more than $200 billion has been wiped off the combined market value of SK Hynix and Samsung since the start of the Iran conflict. $200 billion in market cap? Gone.
That is staggering. And it's ironic because on paper, a memory shortage should be bullish for memory makers. Higher prices, fatter margins, but the energy shock is overwhelming the fundamentals.
It's like they're winning the product war but losing the macro war. And there's a materials angle too. Qatar produces over a third of the world's helium supply, and helium is critical for semiconductor manufacturing. A prolonged conflict near the Strait of Hormuz could disrupt access to helium and bromine, both essential chip-making materials.
Okay, but devil's advocate here. Seagate's senior executive told Bloomberg on March 12th that the Iran war is unlikely to hurt the AI supply chain for now. So maybe this is overblown?
Fair point. And I think Seagate is right in the narrow sense. The physical supply chain for memory chips isn't running through the Strait of Hormuz. TSMC is in Taiwan, Samsung and SK Hynix are in Korea, Micron is in the US and Japan. But the second and third order effects are massive. Higher energy costs hit operating margins. Higher oil prices feed into inflation, which keeps interest rates elevated, which makes the cost of capital for these massive data center buildouts more expensive. It's a compounding problem.
That reminds me of what happened in 2022 when the Russia-Ukraine conflict sent energy prices soaring. CNBC actually drew that parallel in their March 12th piece, noting that while a full Ukraine-style inflation shock might be avoided this time, the pressure on energy-intensive industries is very real.
And here's the ripple effect I think is most underappreciated. Bloomberg ran this incredible piece in February titled, "Why the AI Boom Will Make Phones, Cars, and Electronics More Expensive." When Samsung and SK Hynix and Micron prioritize HBM and server DRAM because that's where the margins are, they pull capacity away from the consumer DRAM and NAND that thins into your smartphone, your laptop, your car.
So regular consumers are essentially subsidizing the AI build-out through higher device prices?
Precisely. TrendForce reported in December that smartphone and notebook brands were already raising prices and downgrading specs because of memory shortages. Some manufacturers are literally putting less RAM in your phone to keep the price from going even higher. And that was before the Iran energy shock added another cost layer.
This is wild. So you've got big tech spending $650 billion on AI infrastructure, sucking up all the memory chips, driving prices up 700%, and then the Iran war comes along and jacks up energy costs on top of that. Meanwhile, your next smartphone is going to cost more and have less memory. Who's winning here?
Right now, the memory chip companies' revenue lines look great, but their stock prices don't because of the geopolitical overhang. The hyperscalers have the money to absorb the higher costs, but they're getting less capacity per dollar. And consumers are getting squeezed from both ends, paying more for devices with less memory. The only clear winner right now might be TSMC, which is sitting in the middle of all of this with its $56 billion capex plan for 2026 and a customer lineup that stretches around the block.
And the China angle adds yet another layer. Tell me about Baidu's Kunlun Sin.
So Baidu's semiconductor unit Kunlun Sin filed for a Hong Kong IPO back in January. CNBC reported that JP Morgan is forecasting their chip sales will increase sixfold to 8 billion yuan in 2026. China is accelerating its push for chip self-sufficiency precisely because this crisis validates their argument about supply chain vulnerability. Meanwhile, CNBC reported in February that 5 new Chinese AI models have launched since DeepSeek, with UBS picking favorites. Anthropic and OpenAI have both flagged what they call industrial-scale distillation campaigns by Chinese AI firms. The AI arms race is intensifying the demand pressure from every direction.
So China's response to the memory shortage is to build more domestic capacity, which is a multi-year project. In the short term, they're still dependent on the same constrained global supply. This is a global squeeze with no easy pressure valve.
No easy pressure valve. And the timeline matters enormously. TrendForce says the memory shortage will persist through at least the end of 2026. The Iran conflict shows no signs of quick resolution. Bloomberg reported that energy prices will only fall when the U.S. destroys Iran's ability to attack tankers in the Strait of Hormuz, which is not a 2-week operation. So we're looking at quarters, not weeks of this dual pressure.
All right, contrarian corner time. Alex, the consensus narrative right now is pretty clear. AI memory shortage plus Iran energy shock equals disaster for the tech buildout. Everyone's panicking. What's the contrarian take?
Here's my contrarian view, and I think it's genuinely strong. This crisis might be the best thing that ever happened to the long-term health of the AI industry. And I know that sounds insane, so let me explain.
Please do, because from where I'm sitting, 700% DRAM price increases and $100 oil don't exactly scream good news.
Think about what was happening before this crisis hit. We had the 4 biggest tech companies committing $650 billion to AI infrastructure in a single year. That's a 60% increase over already record spending. Every earnings call was a capex escalation war. Amazon would announce $100 billion, then Microsoft would go higher, then Meta would go higher. There was zero discipline, zero price sensitivity. It was starting to look like the telecom bubble of 1999, where companies were laying fiber optic cable under every ocean, whether they needed it or not.
Okay, I see where you're going. You're saying the shortage is forcing discipline.
Exactly. When memory is abundant and cheap, you build first and ask questions later. When HBM is sold out and DRAM prices are up 700% and your electricity bill just jumped 30%, suddenly every CTO has to ask, do we actually need this much compute? Can we optimize our models to use less memory? Can we deploy more efficient architectures?
Well, actually, that's exactly what we've been seeing from the Chinese AI labs. DeepSeek's whole thesis was about training frontier models with dramatically less compute. And now, with 5 new Chinese AI models launching since DeepSeek, the efficiency innovation is accelerating precisely because they face hardware constraints.
Right. Constraint breeds innovation. This is not a new phenomenon. The entire history of semiconductor progress is the story of engineering around constraints. And here's the quantitative argument. If this shortage forces hyperscalers to achieve even a 20% improvement in memory efficiency across their AI workloads, that saves more capacity than building 3 new DRAM fabs. The math on efficiency gains dwarfs the math on supply expansion.
Okay, but devil's advocate to your devil's advocate. What about the consumer side? Regular people paying more for phones with less memory. That's not efficiency innovation. That's just a worse product at a higher price.
You're right, and I'm not going to pretend that's good for consumers, but here's the thing about the consumer impact. It's temporary, and it has a natural correction mechanism. When smartphone prices get too high and specs get too low, consumers stop upgrading. That demand destruction actually releases memory capacity back into the market. TrendForce's own projections show the consumer memory crunch peaking in Q2 or Q3 2026, and then moderating as the supply-demand balance readjusts.
Interesting. So the contrarian view is short-term pain, long-term gain. The crisis forces AI efficiency innovation, weeds out undisciplined capital allocation, and ultimately creates a healthier, more sustainable AI infrastructure build-out.
That's exactly it. And one more thing. The Iran energy shock specifically might accelerate the shift to nuclear and renewable power for data centers. Microsoft, Amazon, and Google have all signed nuclear power agreements. If $100 oil becomes the norm, the economic case for dedicated nuclear reactors at data center campuses goes from nice to have to existential necessity. 5 years from now, we might look back at this moment as the catalyst that broke AI's dependence on fossil fuel energy.
That's a bold take. Okay, here's the question I want to throw to our listeners, and I mean this genuinely. We're watching the biggest infrastructure build-out in human history run headfirst into a supply wall and an energy crisis at the same time. Do you think this dual shock will delay the AI revolution by years, or will it, as Alex argues, actually accelerate the transition to more efficient and more sustainable AI infrastructure? Because the answer to that question has enormous implications for how you position your portfolio and your business strategy right now.
And I genuinely don't think the consensus has the right answer yet. This is one of those moments where the conventional wisdom is probably wrong, but we won't know which direction for another 6 to 12 months.
All right. Action items. Let's get concrete for our listeners.
3 things. Number 1, for investors and portfolio managers, separate the memory thesis from the geopolitical noise. Yes, SK Hynix and Samsung have lost $200 billion in market cap since the Iran war started, but the underlying fundamentals of the memory business have never been stronger. DRAM prices up 50 to 70% quarter over quarter, HBM completely sold out, total memory market projected to exceed $440 billion in 2026. If you believe the energy shock is temporary, which historically these conflicts-driven spikes are, then this sell-off in memory stocks is a buying opportunity. But hedge your energy exposure. Do not go naked long on Korean memory makers without a view on oil prices.
Number 2.
Number 2, for CTOs and technology leaders, stress test your AI infrastructure plans against sustained memory prices at current levels. Do not budget based on the assumption that DRAM prices will normalize by Q3. TrendForce says the shortage persists through the end of 2026 at minimum. If your AI roadmap assumes abundant, affordable memory, rewrite that roadmap now. Explore memory-efficient model architectures. Look at what the Chinese AI labs are doing with constrained compute. The efficiency playbook exists, it's just not being widely adopted by Western hyperscalers yet, because until now they could just throw money at the problem.
And number 3?
Number 3, watch the Strait of Hormuz situation as a leading indicator for everything else. Bloomberg reported that energy prices will fall when the U.S. neutralizes Iran's ability to attack tankers. That's the variable that determines whether the energy shock component is a one-quarter blip or a multi-year structural shift. If the Strait stays contested through Q3, expect a second wave of impact on semiconductor investment plans, supply chain rerouting, and potentially a downward revision of that $650 billion capex number. The hyperscalers have the money, but even they have boards that start asking questions when the cost per megawatt doubles.
The overarching takeaway from today, we are watching 2 structural forces collide in real time. The insatiable AI demand for memory, with DRAM prices up 700% and HBM sold out, crashing into a geopolitical energy shock that's pushing oil above $100 and wiping hundreds of billions off Asian tech valuations. The $650 billion AI buildout is not canceled, but it is being reshaped by forces that no amount of capital can simply override.
Supply constraints and energy costs are the new binding constraints on the AI revolution, and the companies and investors who adapt fastest will define the next era.
And remember, constraint is not the enemy of innovation. It's the mother of it. Every breakthrough in semiconductor history came from engineers being told they couldn't have what they wanted. This crisis will be no different.
Coming up next, we are diving into Japan's Rapidus story and the global race for 2-nanometer manufacturing. Rapidus just secured another round of government funding. IBM is setting up shop in Hokkaido, and the question everyone is asking is whether Japan can actually pull off what no country outside Taiwan has done in 30 years.
Stay data-driven. Bye.